Pilipinas, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, World, Huwebes, Mayo 6, taong 2021. Kumusta po kayo? Isang araw na lang matapos na ang work week, mga amigo. Mayo 6, aba, ang bilis ng panahon. Ako sa inyong bonito pamilya, hanggang alas 8 po tayo magbalitaan, magtsikahan sa mga isyong napapanahon. Pero bago niyan, alamin muna natin ang mga balita mula kay Sheila. Ilumas sila.
Maraming salamat, Bonito. Narito ang mga may init na balita ngayong umaga. Sa ulo ng mga balita, 6 na COVID-19 positive mula India nakapasok sa bansa. Curfew, hinamon ni Duterte sa debate sa isyu ng West Philippine Sea. At lalaki, bugbog sarado ng mapagtripan ng mga kilalang adik sa Quiapo. Sa detalye ng mga balita, 6 na biyahero mula India na positibo sa COVID-19 ang nakapasok sa bansa bago magdeklara ng travel ban ang pamahalaan. Ayon kay Department of Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere, ang 6 na pasyente ay kabilang sa 110 biyahero mula India na dumating sa bansa at isinailalim sa quarantine at COVID-19 testing. Nagdeklara ng travel ban ang Pilipinas noong April 29 laban sa mga biyahero mula India para pigilan ang pagpasok ng bagong variant ng COVID-19 na unang nadetect sa nasabing bansa. Kahapon sinama sa travel ban ng Pilipinas ang Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal at Sri Lanka na inaasahang magtatapos sa May 14. Ang India ang itinuturing ngayong world's worst COVID-19 outbreak kung saan karamihan sa mga ospital doon ay nagnanakawan na umano ng oxygen at hospital beds. Marami rin umano ang mga pasyente na namamatay na lang sa mga ambulansya at car park sa India, kakahintay para sa higaan at oxygen. Nito lamang May 3, nasa mahigit 70 Pinoy sa India ang nagpositibo sa COVID-19 ayon mismo kay Philippine Ambassador to India, Ramon Bagatsing Jr. Habang 2 umano rito ay sumakabilang buhay dahil sa nasabing virus. Samantala, may hamon si Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte sa dating Associate Justice ng kataas-taasang hukuman. Ito'y matapos batikusin ng nasabing Associate Justice ang diskarte ni Duterte sa pagresolba sa tumitinding tensyon sa West Philippine Sea. Kung ano ang hamon na ito ng Pangulo at kung bakit tila nabanggit dito ang nagdaang administrasyon, alamin natin sa report ni Victor de Guzman. Victor?
Hinamon ni Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte si dating Supreme Court Associate Justice Antonio Carpio sa debate sa issue ng West Philippine Sea, partikular na tungkol sa 2016 ruling ng Permanent Court of Arbitration sa The Hague na nagsasabing nasa ilalim ng soberanya ng Pilipinas ang mga pinag-aagawang mga isla. Sa kanyang pre-recorded talk to the people kagabi, sinabi ni Duterte na pareho silang abogado ni Carpio at handa umano siyang makipagdebate sa dating Associate Justice.
Pareho man tayo abogado. Gusto mo magdebate tayo. Madalawa, 3 tanong lang ako.
Kinwestiyon rin ng Pangulo ang nagawa ng dating administrasyon para mabawi ang pinag-aagawang teritoryo sa West Philippine Sea. Pahayag pa ni Duterte, sinubukan umano niyang i-pressure ang China sa pamamagitan ng desisyon ng Arbitral Tribunal. Pero wala umanong nangyari.
Dahil nito, sige sila, bira. Sige bira. Ngayon gusto nila pumunta ako sa United Nations, magmakaawa naman ako doon kung sino-sinong lapitan ko. Ipagpatuloy ko raw yung away. Kasi wasting my time and at the same time disrupting the good relations of China and the Philippines.
Noong 2016, naglabas ng desisyon ang The Hague Arbitral Tribunal kung saan sinabi nito na walang legal basis ang China sa pag-angkin sa mga teritoryo ng Pilipinas. Lumabas rin sa nasabing desisyon na nilabag ng China ang sovereign rights ng bansa sa exclusive economic zone sa pamamagitan ng paghaharang sa mga mangingisdang Pinoy at oil exploration. pati na rin ang pagtatayo ng mga istruktura sa mga pinag-agawang teritoryo. Para sa TV ko to, your daily source of news on the move, Victor de Guzman. This is Breakfast.
Maraming salamat, Victor de Guzman. Sa iba pang mga balita, may bago ng hepe ang Philippine National Police, kung sino ang papalit kay General Dibold Sinas at kung paano nito tinanggap ang pagpili sa kanya ni Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. Alamin natin sa report ni Casey Derilo. Casey?
Ayon kay Presidential Spokesman Harry Roque, itinalaga ni Pangulong Duterte si Eleazar bilang bagong chief ng PNP dahil sa track record nito na may professionalism, dedikasyon at integridad sa trabaho. Dagdag pa ni Interior Secretary Eduardo Año, inirekomenda si Eleazar bilang susunod na pinuno ng PNP base sa seniority, merit, serbisyo publiko at competence na mamuno sa police force. Lubos naman ang pasasalamat ni General Eleazar sa pamahalaan at DILG sa pagpili sa kanya na pamunuan ng 220,000 strong PNP force na magpoprotekta sa mga Pilipino. Bago italagang PNP chief, nagsilbi si Eleazar bilang PNP's Chief of Directorial Staff, pinuno ng National Capital Region Police Office o NCRPO at pinangunahan ang Joint Task Force COVID Shield. Inaasahang gagawin ng PNP turnover rights sa darating na May 7, Biyernes. Nakatakda naman na magretiro si General Eleazar sa November 13 ngayong taon sa edad na 56 na mandatory retirement age sa PNP. Para sa TV ko to, your daily source of news on the move. Casey Derilo, this is Breakfast.
Maraming salamat, Casey, at syempre congratulations kay Lieutenant General Eleazar. Ayan, clarify lang natin kasi General lang yung nakasulat eh. Ito, para naman sa ating isa pang balita. Isang kakaibang gimmick ng community pantry ang inulan ng batikos sa Bulacan. Kung anong meron sa community pantry na ito at tila nakakapagpababa ng tingin umano sa mga kababaihan. Alamin natin sa report, magbabalik si Casey Derilo. Casey?
Inulan ng batikos ang barangay konsehal sa Bulacan matapos maglagay ng tarpaulin sa community pantry na nakakabastos at nang mamaliit umano ng mga kababaihan. Trending sa social media si Marvin Garcia, konsehal ng barangay May Santol, Bulacan, matapos maglagay ng tarpaulin na may sexing babae at nakasulat ang mga katagang kumuha ayon sa laki ng dibdib. Kinilala naman ang babae sa tarpaulin na isang YouTube vlogger na si Tony Fowler. Pahayag ng mga netizen, nakakadegrade sa kababaihan ang tarpaulin at mas lalong nakakabahala na galing ito sa isang public servant. Ani pa ng isang Kim, hindi niya tunay na pangalan, pwede namang umanong maging unique sa ibang paraan. Pahayag naman ng iba, mistulang body shaming ang nasabing slogan at insulto sa mga babae. Samantala, bagamat may mga nainis, marami rin naman ang natuwa sa magandang inisyatibo ni Garcia para makatulong sa mga nagugutom na kababayan. Bukod sa kontrobersyal na tarpaulin, may iba pang signage na nasabing community pantry, gaya ng kumuha ng tama at huwag gawing collection items ang mga gulay. Para sa TV ko to, your daily source of news on the Casey Derilo, this is Breakfast.
Samantala, balitang trending naman tayo. Babala sa mga umuuwi ng gabi dyan. Isang lalaki ang napagtripan ng mga kilalang adik sa Quiapo. Kung anong klaseng paghihirap ang dinanas ng biktima at kung paano siya nakaligtas sa kamay ng mga adik, alamin natin sa report ni Victor de Guzman. Victor?
Huli sa CCTV camera ang pambubugbog sa isang lalaki na kinilalang si Alfred de Vera, 38 anyos, habang naglalakad sa 394 Quiapo, Manila ng gabi. Salaysay ng ina ng biktima na piniling itago ang kanyang pangalan. Pauwi na sana ang kanyang anak nang biglang may lumapit sa kanyang lalaki na may dalang pamalo. Agad namang umiwas si Alfred at tumakbo, pero na-corner ito matapos maglabasan ng ilang pangkalalakihan na nais bumugbog sa kanya. Makikita sa CCTV kung paano walang awang pinagtulungan si Alfred. Nagtamo ng mga pasa sa muka, sugat at bali sa kanang braso si Alfred dahil sa tindi ng pambubugbog. Matapos ang insidente, agad namang nag-report sa barangay ang ina ng biktima kung saan naman napag-alaman ng mga kilalang adik ang mga sospek. Mahilig din umanong mantrip ang mga ito sa tuwing may napapadaan sa kanilang lugar. Samantala, kasalukuyan ang pinaghahanap ang mga sangkot sa insidente. Para sa TV ko to, your daily source of news on the move, Victor de Guzman. This is Breakfast.
Samantala, tumagilid ang isang truck na may lulang mga baboy sa Navotas City. Kung ano ang naging sanhi ng insidente at kung may nasaktan ba, alamin natin sa report. Magbabalik si Victor de Guzman. Victor?
Isang trailer truck na may sakay na 160 baboy ang tumagilid dahilan para mamatay ang 40 dito sa Road 10, Navotas City. Ayon sa driver na kinilalang si Eric Albacino, nanggaling pa sa General Santos City ang mga baboy, pandagdag sa mababang supply nito sa Metro Manila at Karatig Probinsya. Pagdaan ni Albacino sa isang kurbada, nawala ng balanse ang container na hatak ng truck dahilan para tumaob ito. Hinala niya, napunta lahat ng baboy sa kanang bahagi ng container dahil wala itong harang sa gitna, kaya mabilis na wala ang balanse ng sasakyan. Parehas namang naka-seatbelt ang driver at pahinante, kaya hindi ito nagtamo ng matinding injury. Dahil nakawala ang mga natirang buhay na baboy, sinubukan nitong bantayan ng isang concerned citizen pero wala ring nagawa ng dumugi na mga residente ang mga ito. Ang iba, sa mismong pinangyarihan ng insidente pa, nagkatay. Punto ng isang residente, hindi naman namatay ang mga baboy sa sakit kaya kakainin pa rin nila ito. Dumating naman ang isang rescue truck para isakay ang mga baboy, pati ang 40 nasawi sa insidente. Babala naman ang isang city veterinarian, dapat naman na mag-ingat sa pagkain ng mga baboy na sangkot sa insidente at nararapat na ma-check muna ito ng isang meat inspector. Samantala, hindi nagsanhi ng bigat sa trapiko ang pagtaob ng delivery truck dahil naitabi naman agad ito sa gilid ng kalisada. Para sa TV ko to, your daily source of news on the move, Victor de Guzman. This is Breakfast.
Maraming salamat, Victor de Guzman. At yan namang mainit na balita ngayong umaga. Magbabalik ang Breakfast matapos ang ilang paalala.
At ngayon, dadako naman tayo sa usapin ng bayan. Ang pinag-usapan ang explorer ng bayan, Gary Lim. Nasaan kasi yung G on the spot?
Maraming salamat, Bonito. Magandang umaga, Luzon, Visayas at Mindanao. Nako, eto na naman po, kasama nyo pa rin sa ngayon ang inyong Kuya G sa G on the spot. Dito yan sa pamilihan ng Baliwag, Bulacan. Ito, kita mo naman ngayon. Ayan, ipapakita natin ang bilihan sa umagang-umaga dito sa Baliwag, Bulacan. Anyway, samahan nyo po ako dahil itatanong natin sa ating mga kababayan kung ano sa palagay nila ang isang mahalagang katangian sa isang leader para maayos ang isang pamahalaan. Ayan, antabayanan ninyo ang kanilang mga sagot, ha? O ayan, tara na. Ate, sa palagay niyo po ba, ano ang isang mahalagang katangian sa isang leader para maayos ang isang pamahalaan?
Ano? Depende.
Depende sa ano?
Depende kasi sa ngayon maraming mga na hindi naman, wala namang nagginagawa
Ayun. So ano dapat? Ano ba dapat? Hindi corrupt. Ano pa? Ano ba ang mga binibenta natin dito, ate?
Itlog, butas.
Ayan, itlog at putas. Okay, salamat ha. Salamat sa opinion nyo. Thank you. Kaya magandang umaga. May tanong na po ako. Sa palagay nyo po ba, ano ang isang katangiang mahalagang katangian ng isang leader para maayos ang ating pamahalaan?
Sa bayan po ng Baliwag.
Hindi, kahit saan leader, kahit saan. Sa buong Pilipinas.
Ang pinakauna po sa lahat, yung magandang ugali, Marunong po siyang magpakumbaba sa lahat ng bagay. Unang-una, katulad po namin mga enforcer. Andiyan dyan po siya, tinutulungan po niya. Siya po ang pinakamuka sa amin lahat na nandito sa gilid na sa kalsada.
So ano sa palagay nyo? Mapagkumbaba.
Mapagkumbaba po at matulungin ang aming mayor dito sa bayan ng Baliwag. Wala
Ayan.
po kami masasabi sa kanya. Napakahusay pong mayor sa amin dito sa bayan ng Baliwag. Ilang
Ayan.
beses na po niya nakuha yung most outstanding mayor of the Philippines.
Yan, batiin natin. Sino po ba mayor natin? Batiin
Si
natin.
Mayor Perdi Estrella po. Mabuhay po ang mayor namin dito sa bayan ng Baliwag.
Maraming salamat po, kuya. Thank you.
po, sir.
Ano sa palagay mo ang isang mahalagang katangian ng isang leader para maayos ang isang pamahalaan? Walang tama, walang mali. Gusto ko lang makuha yung opinion mo.
Leader?
Anong isang mahalagang katangian sa isang leader?
Talino.
Ha? Matalino.
Saka may respeto sa kapwa.
May respeto sa kapwa.
Kayang pamunuan pamunuan yung nasasakupan niya.
Okay, salamat ate. Thank you. Ayan, mga kababayan, bonito, narinig ninyo ang mga sagot ng iilan sa ating mga taong bayan. Ang kanilang mga sagot tungkol dun sa ating mga katanungan, tungkol sa isang mahalagang katangian ng isang leader sa bayan o sa bansa. O yan, mula dito sa San Jose, Bulacan, Barangay San Jose, Bulacan. Kanina, doon tayo, ito yun, nasako po yan diyan sa pamilihan ng Baliwag, Bulacan, ang San Jose, Barangay San Jose. Okay, yan naman po ang inyong Kuya G. Dito lamang yan sa G on the Spot. Bye-bye! See you, bonito!
Pilipinas, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. Alam mo yung word na polymath? Yung matalino? Yung alam sa music, science, law, at math. Ito yung polymath. At itong kaibigan ko ito ay matagal na itong maraming beses naging amicus curiae ito ng Supreme Court para liwanagan sa mga bagay-bagay, mga issues na legal. Naging dean to ng Graduate School of Law ng San Beda at ngayon ay Vice President ng Cagayan State University. Biyasa sa filosofiya, theology, at maging sa batas. Si Father Rani Aquino. Magandang umaga si Father Rani.
Good morning, my good friend Nino, and it's a very good thing for me to reconnect with you now.
Same here. I'm very happy to have you in my show. And then thank you for your time. And then I heard you're still recovering from COVID, and then I hope you well.
Yes, I'm free of the virus, but the recovery is long haul. This is what they call long haul COVID, and so the marks are still there, like difficulty sometimes breathing, you run out of breath, hinihingal ka, ganun. Yung mga signs na ganun ba?
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, I'm okay.
You Father Moren, I'm sorry about your father.
Yes, Daddy passed away on November 10, and you know, Nino, you can never get over the death of your parents talaga. I lost my mother 3 years ago. We newly celebrated her death anniversary. We newly marked her death anniversary, third death anniversary. Then this year it was my father. So it's very difficult. You never get over it.
Sorry to hear that, Father. But sometimes in our loss, sometimes people need to learn something about it, and we have to share it with people, and then the pilgrims of the church and the citizens of the Philippines need now wisdom coming from you. Number one, ikaw mismo ay naka-experience kung ano ang mapait na COVID. At alam nyo rin sa'yo, ikaw being observant for how many years na rin amicus curiae ka ng ating Supreme Court. Alam mo, may palisiya na kulang o palisiya na pwedeng gamitin para itong pag-treat natin sa pandemya ay gaganda. Sa tingin mo, something went wrong? What? Father?
Yep.
Where do we, saan nagkamali? May mali ba? May kulang ba sa ating pamalaan? Dito sa pandemic.
Very hard to say, Nino, kasi, most of the people, well, not most, but many people do blame government. And in a sense, it's not clear really what the management theory or management policy has been. For example, ang isang parating pinupuna, when you deal with a pandemic like this, you must have medical experts, epidemiologists, physicians, and scientists at the helm advising government. But if you get people with specialties in other fields, like security affairs, like the military, the mix is very bad. And this was not any emergency. In fact, it is not any kind of an emergency. It is an extraordinary kind of an emergency. Then also, I think there is the issue with transparency. Nino, from the budget of the Cagayan State University alone, we had to surrender something like 36% of our budget, which is very big. It could have gone to buildings, it could have gone to infrastructure, it could have gone to improvement of facilities, but we willingly and joyfully surrendered that in the belief that it was going to be helpful to the fight against COVID. But people now want to know where all this money went, and I think that they have a right to know that. Then also, we had a forum not too long ago, the Philippine College of Jurisconsults, of which I am the president, organized an online forum. Justice Adolf Ascuna is the chairman, organized a forum, and we invited experts from constitutional law, medicine, to comment, even political science. Professor Clarita Carlos. And this was the common sentiment that there doesn't seem to be any clarity about what we are doing and how we should deal with it. And here was one point made. In order to attain 70% herd immunity, which is thought to be the saving grace for the Philippines, we need the rollout of the vaccines fast. But they don't seem to be going out fast enough. Then Nino, just one last point, no? Very, very alarmingly, I was told by a colleague in San Beda, Manila, that he was able to get a vaccine even if he was not yet on the list. So I asked him, paano nangyari yun? May lista yan ng priorities. Ang sagot niya, maraming tao na dapat tumanggap ng bakuna hindi nagpakita dahil sa yung mga, for example, in the slum areas or in the barong-barongs, those who are supposed to come for vaccines and who need it most because they cannot afford it on their own, are keeping away from it because of the misinformation drive and the alarmists who have sounded the alarm on the vaccine.
Okay, in your column, in your latest column sa Manila Times, inunahan mo pa ng Latin, initium disputandi definitio nominis. Meaning, we have to be clear with our terms. So what do you mean about it? We have to be clear with our terms. Terms in who will have what?
Kasi we were debating, we were discussing a single issue. And the issue was, should vaccinations be made compulsory? And we were discussing it not so much as a policy issue, we were discussing it as a constitutional, legal, and moral issue. Can we legally, morally, ethically compel vaccinations? And I didn't want the discussion to be waylaid by so many considerations kasi may nagsasabi dyan, you know, there are some people who already think that they have lived a full life and so they do not need the vaccine anymore. For God's sake, they may feel like they have lived a whole life, but the moment they are infected, they become a source of danger, a threat to others who may still like to live long and full lives. So that is a non-argument and a non-issue that I didn't like to get into the picture.
So, meaning, in simple terms, you want this to be compulsory?
No, we are still coming up, Nino, with a common position in the Philippine College of Jurisconsults. And I myself would like some form of compulsion in the sense that, example, of course, you cannot drag people and then strap them to a chair and then jab them with the vaccine. That would be really draconian. But I think that some form of compulsion would be like, if you don't get a vaccine and you cannot present proof of the vaccine, you won't be admitted for long-haul flights, for example. Or if you don't allow your children to be vaccinated, or a college student does not get vaccinated and cannot present proof of vaccination, when schools reopen, then this student may not be admitted to school. Things like that. Limitations that are the consequence of your own decision not to get the vaccine. That's the kind of compulsion we are talking about. Of course, the further form of compulsion, which, by the way, was upheld by the European Court of Human Rights, is fining people who don't get vaccines. See, so that's why we invited so many people, some learned and trustworthy people, and the fellows of the college themselves did research, very good research, on jurisprudence. And while of course there are staunch oppositionists like Jemay Gatdula, there are those who have a more balanced and nuanced position.
In selecting the priority list of who will be vaccinated, perhaps the principle of utilitarianism is in place. Are you aware of this? And then is this right, or how are we going to do with it?
Yeah, I've never accepted utilitarianism, Nino, kasi in its crudest form, it's the greatest good for the greatest number. And I've never accepted that to be a good ethical principle, because if, for example, it would make the people in your group happy to skewer you alive or to roast you, then according to the principle of utilitarianism, since you are the only one to suffer, in contrast to the joy or pleasure that it would give so many other people who would skewer you alive, then it would be okay to skewer you. And that is something I cannot accept. But I think that the proper principle to apply is the principle of proportionality, in the sense that, yes, it is true. We may not know everything about the vaccine yet. And it is also true that we may not know everything about COVID yet. For example, I've always been asking, I have had COVID already. Now, can I infect others still? And can I still be infected? On the one hand, my own infectious disease specialist tells me, no, Father, your blood shows that you already have the antibodies. So you have natural immunity for 4 months or so, and you are not able to infect others. So that gives me a degree of confidence. But shortly after that, I get a friend sending me an article or even giving me a comment, because he's a physician, telling me, don't trust in that too much, because you can still get infected with another strain. There are so many strains floating about outside there. You can still get infected with another strain. So yes, there is so much uncertainty. The vaccines are used only in this emergency situation. But according to the principle of proportionality, Nino, When there is no other remedy, it is ethical to make use even if you use only experimental drugs, therapies, or interventions, provided that there is due proportion between the risks of the vaccine and the benefits that you hope to achieve by using the vaccine. And
So,
certainly, well, that's exactly the job of ethicists and people in policy, as well as we need data, of course, from medical science. And what we have so far indicates that these initial fears about AstraZeneca and all that are too premature, and this thing has to be dealt with immediately. Do you know, Nino, that in Tuguegarao, it came to a stage that the morgues of the hospitals were not even able to accommodate all the dead who were brought there. You see, that's how bad it became.
there were lots of information coming out even before the pandemic about the COVID, and then ito yata ang dahilan kung bakit maraming natatakot dito sa COVID, at saka kulang o mali informasyon ang yung pinapalabas tungkol din dito sa bakuna.
Yun nga ang sabi ko, ninyo, napaka-laking perwisyo ang dinulot nitong mga rumor mongers at fear mongers na ito. And this is an instance when I think that rumor mongering should really be penalized as a crime, because there are so many people who, without any scientific data at all, without any basis, make announcements like, nako, galing sa China yan, delikado yan, itong Sinovac na ito. Yung AstraZeneca, nagkukos ng blood clot, maraming namamatay na gumamit yan. Where did they get all that data? And the consequence is that many who should be vaccinated are not getting it because they are so gullible that they believe in this loose talk. That's my fear. You know, itong sinasabi natin noon, sana may bakuna na at nang matapos na ito. Oh, ngayon na may bakuna naman, natatakot tayo sa bakuna. When in God's name shall we be able to deal with this unless we become rational, no?
Yun ang sabi ni Archbishop Jose Palma, pinagdasal natin magkabakuna, ngayon may bakuna na, natakot tayo. So kung ang Diyos, kung ikaw yung Diyos, parang naguguluhan ng Diyos kung ano ang gagawin.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Ang problema daw, sabi ng WHO, World Health Organization, na mas malala pa sa pandemya, itong tinatawag na infodemics, maling informasyon.
Correct.
Oh, kulang na impormasyon, kumbaga. Anyway, before we leave this discussion of pandemic, ano ba ang dapat gawin as a policy na kulang?
Well, first of all, make use of every possible medium to reach out to people. And yung mga pinapadala sa mga barangay, dapat well-informed din. I can understand that at this stage of the pandemic, when all hands are on deck and you cannot send physicians to the barangays to do the info drive anymore, sometimes you get people who are willing to do so to go, but please see to it that they are well educated and well informed. And you know, I also want to appeal to the civic conscience of our people. Kung wala kayong mga datos, kung hindi sigurado kung saan nanggaling yung mga datos nyo, huwag nyo nang ipagkalat yung mga nakakasirang, nakakanerbiyos, nakakatakot na mga balita na yan. Pabayaan nyo na ang mga scientifico, yung mga doktor na magpaliwanag sa mga tao ang mga bagay-bagay na nauukol sa bakuna. After all, ninyo, a principle is informed consent. You are vaccinated after you are given the information about the vaccine.
Okay, mainit yun, ang politika. And then you cannot remove from the proportion yung sa equation natin, Pilipino, ang yung parang nasiyahante. Pagdating ng politics, parang maski may pandemya, Parang pinag-usapan pa rin itong politika. Ngayon, ay parang mainit na issue itong West Philippine Sea. Saan ba, yung parang, bakit sa ilang taon na ito ang isyong West Philippine Sea din? Bakit hindi pa rin ito ma-resolve?
Because you have a bully. Because your neighbor is a bully. If you build a house, Dino, no matter how kind, good, law-abiding a man you are, if your neighbor is a bully, you will always have trouble. That's what's happening to us. Kaya parati ko sinasabi ito, kung tayo lang ang lalaban, hindi obra yan. Just compare the relative size of the Philippines and China. Just compare our economies. Just compare our military force. Wala tayong kalaban-laban. That's why our fight for the West Philippine Sea should be a common fight. In other words, let's ask ASEAN, as an organization of Southeast Asian countries, to be involved in this. After all, many of the ASEAN countries are involved in the dispute as well. Kasi sinasakop din ng China ang mga sovereign rights nila sa mga dagat, sa dagat. No? It is very funny, in fact, I find it tragic, na nung nanalo tayo sa arbitral tribunal, the countries in the West, the United Kingdom, Canada, the US, were all bearing down hard on China. Sundin nyo ang desisyon ng tribunal. Tayo mismo, parang hindi kapanipaniwala na ipinaglalaban natin ang ipinanalo natin. Now, of course, Digong is right. The president's right in saying that we didn't lose that in his time. That's correct. In fact, kaya nga pumunta tayo sa korte with all of Pinoy's men. Del Rosario, we went with Solgen at that time. So these were, the trouble started in Pinoy's time, maybe long before that even. But what people are blaming the president for is he doesn't seem to have followed up on the decision. Tuwang-tuwa ang napakadaming profesor ng international law nung binigkas ng ating Pangulo sa isang State of the Nation. The decision of the tribunal has now become part of international law. Very good. Very good. And he is right. And we were thinking that after that time, he would take more determined measures, like asking the United Nations, like asking other organizations to come to our aid to help us regain our rights under that decision. Pero wala naman nangyari. He even makes statements like, it's already de facto in their hands. You know, when you make a declaration like that, unilateral declarations in international law can be binding against the state that makes them. No? That was the decision of the International Court of Justice in the nuclear test cases that were conducted in the Pacific against France. France made a unilateral decision, and the International Court of Justice said, your unilateral declaration has created expectations on other countries of the world. You are now bound by that unilateral declaration. Kaya kung minsan natatakot ako sa mga statement ating Pangulo, he may mean them in jest or siguro dahil sa asar lang, pero in international law, walang ganyanan eh.
Walang emotion. So, sino sana ang magpapatupad dito? Who will enforce that decision ng tribunal?
You know, decisions in international law are enforced horizontally. Unlike in domestic law where you ask the police, ipatupad mo nga itong desisyon ng hukuman, sa international law, ipinapaubaya mo sa mga bansa mismo na magpatupad ng desisyon. So, that's what I was saying. We have not reached out to other countries to help us enforce the judgment. And the country in the best position, the organization in the best position to do that would be ASEAN. Come to think of that, Nino, we keep saying, malaking ekonomiya ng China. Tama. But China deals economically with ASEAN. How many of the ASEAN countries are its clients? Ngayon, kung magkaisa ang ASEAN dahil sa hinihingi natin ang tulong nila na ipatupad itong desisyon na ito, China will think twice. It's the same thing with asking the US. It's the same thing with asking, for example, other organizations. Have we even approached the United Nations? People keep saying it's useless because the matter is with the Security Council. It need not go as far as the Security Council. For example, if in the General Assembly passes a resolution, that's very persuasive. While it is true that resolutions of the General Assembly are not legally binding, the resolutions of the General Assembly can many times be taken as evidence of international consensus.
Okay, there was this mutual agreement between Philippines or treaty, mutual treaty between the U.S. and the Philippines signed way back 1950s. So it's
Mutual defense. It's the Mutual Defense Treaty. Yes, it's still in place.
binding.
Yes, it's still in place. In fact, the Mutual Defense Treaty was there or is there. The only thing that was abrogated was the military bases agreement. And that treaty was defeated in our Senate by only one vote. Pero yung Mutual Defense Treaty, andyan pa rin yan. But you see ninyo, that comes into play only when our territory is invaded. What China has done so far is, it has not really invaded our territory. What it has done is interfere with our fishing rights. Let's remember na yung decision ng International Tribunal is in accordance with the law of the sea, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Hindi pinag-usapan ang teritoryo. Kasi pag ang pinag-uusapan ang teritoryo, dapat sa International Court of Justice tayo. Kasi yung arbitral tribunal, wala siyang jurisdiction over land disputes, over territorial disputes.
Okay, there are many politicians, a senator at that, who claim that they right the president of China stopping the influx of their forces in our territory. Is that binding? Is that the right move to do?
Oh, I didn't get that ninyo. What was that? What was that?
May mga senador, may mga politicians who write letter, correspondences to China, and then asking them to remove the influx of their forces in our territory. Is that the right thing to do? Is that proper?
Well, that's good in the sense that it shows Xi Jinping and yung mga alipores niya na hindi natutuwa ang mga Pinoy. Pero ninyo, in international law, you look for those with international legal personality. And the one with international legal personality is the state itself. So dapat pamahalaan ang magprotesta. And one thing is, I'm very grateful to Secretary Teddy Boy Locsin kasi mabilis siyang kaagad nagpo-protest, nagpa-file ng protest. Now, people might say, ano naman ang ginawa ng mga protest na yan? Wala naman. No. In international, it's very effective. Kasi, for example, sasakupin ng China the latest reef. It was named after a composer.
Yes.
No. Well, anyway, that latest reef, they occupied that. Now, they tied their ships, in fact, to each other. Immediately, Secretary Locsin filed a protest. Now, you can say, well, they didn't listen to that. No? Well, in fact, they did listen kasi pinaalis nila yung mga barko nila. But the importance of that is it registers the continuing objection of the Republic of the Philippines. Kasi kung hindi ka gagalaw, ang epekto niyan ay parang estoppel sa domestic law natin. pag pinayagan mo ang isang bagay na hindi dapat mangyari, pag nagprotesta ka later on, ang sasabihin ng hukuman, pumayag ka napakatagal na panahon na ginagawa yan, pumayag ka. You are now stopped from protesting. Similarly, in international law, ang katumbas niyan ay acquiescence. Nag-acquiesce tayo sa ginawa ng China. By the way, that's called the Julian Felipe Shoal, Julian Felipe Reef. Alright. Nag-acquiesce tayo, hindi na tayo makakaprotesta ngayon. So, later on, pag naging kaso ito, pwede nating sabihin, there was no acquiescence, andito po yung mga objection ng Secretary of Foreign Affairs namin.
In layman's terms, when you are stoop or acquiesce for your right, you are sleeping in your right, you are not claiming it, you're tolerating.
That's correct. That's correct. And if in domestic law, that is only an equitable principle, in international law, it is a key principle. It's a key principle.
Okay. Last question, Father. I really learned something from you again. Moving forward from this issue of West Philippine Sea, what are we going to do?
What are we going to do? Number one, see to it that we elect good leaders and wise leaders in 2021. And I hope that, I pray really kasi parang nawawalan na ako ng hope ninyo So I pray that our voters will not once more sell their votes and be gullible. So nakita na natin ang performance ng mga leader, local and national. Mamili taman tayo ng mga mabuting tao. At huwag tayong magpapaloko. Number two, I think people should wake up to their civic duties and civic responsibilities. Kagaya nitong pagpapabakuna, ano bang takot nyo dyan? Ang dami nang nagpabakuna. Kung talagang peligroso yung mga bakuna na yan, madami na sanang namamatay dahil wala pa naman Kahit yata si Percy Acosta na nagpabakuna na So, wala na tayong dapat ikatakot dyan. And third, yung mga mahilig magpakalat ng maling balita at maling impormasyon, itigil nyo na yan kasi nakakasira yan talaga ng mga hakbang natin at ng mapahinto natin itong paglaganap ng pandemya na ito. So Nino, thank you again for this dialogue with you.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And then, keep safe. Pag may panahon, bibisita ako sa iyo.
Okay, you are most welcome.
Please pray for us as we pray for you.
Yes, you are most welcome. And thank you for this opportunity to dialogue with you.
Alam niyo mga kaibigan, may isang batang gamo-gamo. Curious na curious siya doon sa isang lampara. Ngunit sinabihan siya ng kanyang nanay, huwag kang pumunta doon, baka masunog ka. Ngunit sadyang nakabibighani yung ilaw ng lampara. Kaya isang araw, nung wala ang kanyang mga magulang, pumunta siya doon sa lampara. Nako, sa kasamaang palad, iligob siya ng ilaw at namatay. Alam niyo, maraming ganyan. Nangunguryoso kung ano ang pwedeng gawin para yumaman. Ano ang pwedeng gawin para maging masaya. Walang masama na humangad ng mga gano'n. Ito tandaan yung mga kaibigan. May 7 dangers to human virtue. Wealth o kayamanan without work, yun isa. Pleasure without conscience. Knowledge without character, business without ethics, science without humanity, religion without sacrifice, politics without principle. Kaya, umayos na ng tama, umangad na ng tama, para hindi ka katamaan. Constituent Gusong, Akong pulong makumaluganan, pananglitman, kami na sakitan, kana nagkasabot na kamusatan. Inyong bonito pamilya, may magnaal daw, Pilipinas.